But I really think, and we're going to talk about getting screwed over and losing a whole bunch of money, but that actually, it made me so much more appreciative and happier now. So if you price real estate in terms of gold, which is one of the best performing assets in 2025, real estate has had a crash already. It all came down to that one conversation. Imagine I had not been polite or respectful to him and he thought I was not the best guy, but he wouldn't have asked me that. And that potentially changed the trajectory of my career. So but if this hadn't happened, the bar of my goals and where I want to be in life would be so much lower, but also it forced me to dream much bigger.
Okay, everyone, welcome back to the show where we talk about how to avoid burnout, overcome burnout, and do all the things that help you build this business that serves you by leaning into systems and leverage. And today I've got a super amazing guest for you. He is a fellow high-performing agent. He is living proof that there is more than one way to build a real estate business. We're going to talk with Lawrence Dunning. He is a top producing agent in Chicago. He has an incredible niche representing developers on new construction multi-unit buildings. It's actually kind of a tongue twister, so say it again fast. But he handles complex, high-stakes deals with investors and has navigated the kind of partnership disaster that I'm gonna dig into about that would end most careers, but he came out on the other side a lot stronger. So if you're curious about what it takes to build a super high volume, resilient business, how to find balance, pay attention to this conversation because you will not be disappointed. So Lawrence, I'm super excited to have you here.
Likewise, I'm really excited.
Okay, so introduce yourself. I know you're in Chicago. You've been in the business for a while, but what's your origin story? How'd you get into real estate?
That's a great question. I was a trader. I moved to the US for a trading company in London. And I moved first to Amsterdam, then Chicago, then Wall Street in New York. And I moved back to Chicago. Then I left, started my own company, made all this money. And I got to 30 and I basically had a few $1 million of liquid assets. And I was like, I'm just going to pursue some personal dreams. So I basically gave away my trading company, which was a big mistake. I should have kept some ownership. And then the only thing I did smart, I guess, during the next 5 years was I bought a big commercial building. And then I didn't know anything about real estate. And I thought it was so interesting looking back because I have a finance MBA. I'm a big reader. And somehow investing in real estate just kind of slipped through the cracks. It went over your head because in the traditional finance world, it's only other things, stocks, bonds, cash, they don't really talk about investing in real estate. So during the 5 years, I basically took a sabbatical. I made all these mistakes a young man can make. I went through 2009 crisis, lost a whole bunch of money in some investments. I realized during the time, I was like, man, this building I have is making all this money. And I became really curious about real estate as an investment model. And I started thinking, well, maybe there's something here. And my personality is I kind of go all in. The last year of trading, I was like, I need a break from this whole lifestyle. I'm just going to go all in real estate. I get my license. I started doing development projects with some developers who ended up screwing me over a few years later. It was just one of those things where it's funny when you look back at your life, sometimes one conversation you have with someone can completely change the trajectory of your life. But you only realize it when you look back years later. And it was actually a friend of mine who lived in my high-rise building at the time. We're both night owls. So I would see him late at night, just him and I would let our dogs play and we would just chat. And he was an attorney and he was like, he just got his real estate license and he'd tell me, there's so much money in real estate and development. You'd kill it with your English accent. And I guess that planted the seed because then he opened up a real estate company and I started working with him 12 years ago. So that's kind of the origin story. Is I got into real estate. I was an investor first before I even became a broker. It's easy now to look back and say, well, you had a leg up because you had that knowledge base, but I couldn't put the dots together at the time. I was kind of focusing on residential and helping people because I didn't really know how to build a business in real estate. I had a little trading company that was very profitable, but trading it's a completely different world. Looking back, what I should have done is I should have just focused from day one on real estate development and working with investors. Luckily, the way my career worked out, that's kind of what I ended up doing over time. I just wish I could have shortened that time, I guess.
Don't we all? Yeah, but the thing is, like, if you could have shortened it, but also look at everything you learned along the way.
That's true.
Like
That's very true.
someone told me one time, because sometimes I'm like, I wish I would have learned this sooner, but at the same time, I learned, I told you my kind of story of how like 2021 I like just totally burnt out. And one time someone was interviewing me about it and she said something that was like probably the most profound thing I'd ever heard. It's just kind of funny. 'Cause like you said, you don't realize it until you look back. And she said that, when you take something and you take a really big lesson and you compress it into a short timeline, right? So you could have taken years and years and years to learn this lesson, but then the big powerful moment or the catalyst moment comes in a very short timeline. You learn a lot really fast and you learn. And the most important thing I think you get from that is you bounce back and you become more resilient.
I love that when you look back at your life. I'm so glad you said that. Yeah, because it's such a good point. When you look back at your life, it's easier to say, oh, obviously you have so much more wisdom as you get older. I should have done this, I should have done that. But I really think, and we're going to talk about getting screwed over and losing a whole bunch of money. It made me so much more appreciative and happier now. And I
Yeah.
think, I don't know if I'll be the same person. Like none of us will be the same person, right? With the butterfly effect, these little changes make huge differences when compounded over years. So I think all the things we went through at the time, it sucks, but you tend to grow from bad things more than good things. So you're completely right. I'm newly grateful.
Yeah, there you go. I love that. You said something a minute ago that I was like, I pinned it. It was this. Why do you think it is? Because when you said you were in investing before, but you'd never thought about real estate investing, I hear that a lot. I also hear the other side. People who are in real estate only invest in real estate and they're afraid to invest in stocks or, so it's kind of vice versa. Why do you think that is? Now that you have experience in both, I think you're a great person to ask that question.
So I published a book a year ago and it was called The Forgotten Asset Class. And I called real estate the forgotten asset class because I'm coming from a finance background. But you're 100% right what you said. People that are just in real estate don't tend to invest in stocks or crypto. We do tend to prioritize. And one of my clients who became a good friend, shout out Dean if he hears this, I always tell him, I'm like, you're one of the few people that have a bunch of buildings, you have a bunch of crypto, you have a bunch of equities, you're very diversified. And you're right, looking at most of the people that I know in my life, they are one or the other. They're either real estate people or they're stock and crypto people. And it's very rare to have both. I guess it just comes to the fact that we don't have that much time to learn about things. It's hard to learn a lot about one thing, let alone, 3 or 4 different classes. And I want to write a book. I just had elbow surgery last week, so I'm recovering. And I can't really work out or do much for the next 3 months. And I thought, well, it's over Christmas. Business is probably going to slow down. I want to write a book talking about, and it's not like an investment book, but just talking about different ways of seeing things. And I want to talk about the interplay between real estate investing, investing in equities, specifically tech, because tech has just gone crazy with the AI boom, Bitcoin, and gold. And I want to talk about the interplay between the four. So for instance, I'll give you an example. Some people talk about real estate having a crash coming soon. If you look at the price of real estate in most places in the US in the last, say, decade or 2 decades, it's gone up and to the right. It's gone up. But that's because it's priced in a dollar that's massively depreciating. Since 2020, 40% of all the dollars in circulation are just from 2020 alone, which is crazy considering the US's 250-year history. So if you price real estate in terms of gold, which is one of the best performing assets in 2025, real estate has had a crash already. If you're of the philosophy that I am, that gold has a 5,000-year history as a store of wealth, and the US dollar doesn't have close to that history or track record, then real estate has already had a crash. That's going to be one of the chapters in the book is look at things through different lenses. You can price real estate in terms of the dollar. You can price real estate in terms of tech stocks. You can price real estate in terms of gold. You're going to get 3 very different graphs. And you can do that with everything. You can just look at things through different lenses. It's something that I got a new appreciation with, even talking to my wife, who's a therapist, and she does a lot of couples counseling. And she's always talking about that idea of if you're in a good marriage, the wife comes home and she's the husband with his feet up, drinking a beer, watching some sports. She'll say, oh, look at my hardworking husband, taking a minute for himself, and she'll be happy. If she's in a bad relationship, she'll come in, she'll see exactly the same scene, and she'll say, look at my worthless, good for nothing husband. He's got all this stuff to do, and he's just drinking a beer and watching sports. And it's never the action. It's always the lens in which we see it. And I think that's such an interesting concept when it comes to investing and just what is the approach we're going to use for managing money. And I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. It tends to be very divided between those two things. So sorry for my long tangent. Just came up with the idea a couple of days ago. I thought that's such an interesting thing because I'm thinking about it myself. And I never really hear people talk about, hey, let's price Midwestern multi-units in terms of gold. And it's a fascinating graph, so that's kind of my winter project.
You never think about that. Also, when you said investing in crypto, right? Here, there's so much like misinformation, so much uneducation around like crypto and what it is, because people who are really into traditional investing are really into crypto. Like Robert Krook, do you know who he is? Oh, he's awesome. So you should follow him on Instagram. Robert Krook, if you ever see this, think you're welcome. I'm kidding. No, he's awesome. He's like a major investor, and he's in New York. His content's awesome because he's always like just talking directly to the camera. So it makes you feel like you have direct conversation with like a billionaire. But anyway, he is super into crypto and he does a lot of education around crypto. But you talk to someone in the real estate space, like if you ask me what I think about crypto, I'm like, oh God, I know nothing, right? So to me, it's like super scary, right? So it's just really interesting how your view of like looking through things from the lens, it's your perspective. It's all about perspective. Like whatever you're into is what what you want to see is what you're going to see.
Exactly. You said something very interesting too. You said that you don't know anything about that world. And I think that's a superpower because I think the problem with a lot of Western society is that a lot of our leaders don't know what they don't know. And that's an incredible form of hubris. It was like Socrates, I think, that said, I know only one thing, and that's that I know nothing. And he was the wisest man of his time. And I think that's one thing, that's one of my superpowers is I've spent a lifetime trying to educate myself, but I'm well aware of the things I don't know. And I'll always go to seek an expert to pick their brains about it. So for instance, even writing this book, I started making notes on, okay, I want to talk to this guy about this chapter and this guy about this chapter, because I know they know more than me about that specific topic. So I think that's a really interesting point you made is be aware of your strengths, but also be aware of some of your blind spots. And the beautiful thing now is there's just so much free education from things like podcasts like this, audio books, the internet. There's just so much out there. You just have to take the time to learn, whatever piques your interest. I think it was Nietzsche that said life is 20 times too short, something like that. Like there's so many interests that I have. Sometimes I wish I had 3 lifetimes because I'm never going to get to learn everything that I want to learn.
So true, so true. And you said the thing about interviewing other people who are experts in that area. Tony Robbins wrote Money, Master the Game. Have you read
Yes.
that book?
Yes.
Fantastic book. Totally changed the way I look at money. But what I liked the most about it was that he said in the beginning, I don't know everything. I went and got experts. Like he got Ray Dalio and he got a couple other people who are experts in these areas to teach. So it's just really important. I think it's going to make a great book. What are you going to call it?
I'm still working on the title, but the subtitle will be Musings on Investing in Real Estate, Bitcoin, the Stock Market, and Gold.
Oh
But
gosh, it's
that's
gonna
the
be like,
subtitle, but I need a catchy title before,
yeah, it's like so contrarian. You're musing on investing in real estate and Bitcoin. Oh my
Yeah,
God. A
exactly.
lot of that's can't wait. Also, I just wrote down the forgotten asset class. That's a good title. Nice. How long did it take you to write your first book?
This is so embarrassing. My wife, I think, was seven months pregnant or 6 months pregnant. And I was like, oh, we were just kind of coming out of COVID and I was kind of slow. And I've got a good friend of mine. And I was like, he wanted to write a book as well as one of my best friends, one of my biggest clients. And we bought and sold a bunch of buildings where we've had joint ownership and everything. He's like, well, why don't we write a book about real estate investing? And I'll kind of do the more analytical side. And you're much more interested in the philosophical side, where I'm talking about the power of using money to buy back your freedom and things like that. So he kind of wrote most of his. And I was like, I'll bang mine out before my wife gives birth. My son is about to turn 5 next month. And I think it was 4 years because I had a newborn and I was like, I can't even deal with writing anything. It took a while, but it's a short book. It's 112 pages or 120 pages. But I think the one thing I hope people get out of it is just think about why you're doing things and think about what you're trying to get out of money. Because I think one thing right now, this zeitgeist that's in the air the last 2 years, we've seen so much inflation and we've seen the prices of everything seem so expensive. And every time I see my credit card bills, I'm like pretty well for myself. And I always think, man, how do these people on these fixed salaries live? Or, people living in New York where the rent prices are crazy. There's this idea of, well, life has become really expensive. So how do I beat that by being smart with money, by trying to invest with money? And I think that's the reason why Bitcoin, and to a lesser degree, a lot of the altcoins, they have these, you can have 100x return if you catch the right coin at the right time. They can also go to zero. But I think that's why people are so intrigued by it, because it's this easy money. But I think a lot of people, they're not going to attract wealth if they have negative effects about money. And I think you see that with, it's this imprinting. If you're young and your parents associate wealthy people with evil people, or money is the root of all evil, these saying. But if you think about it, money really I think it's just an amplifier. It's just a tool. I think if you're a wonderful, sweet, happy person who's broke and I give you a few $1,000,000, you're going to be a wonderful, sweet, wealthy person. And I think if you're a miserable person who has no money and then you become very wealthy, you're just going to be a miserable, wealthy person. I just think it's going to amplify things. But I think there's a great book. I just finished it. He's written a couple of books on finance, and he wrote a book called The Psychology of Money. Morgan Housel is his name. And his
Yep.
latest book is The Art of Spending Money. And I think it was it's a short read. I listened to the audiobook twice, actually. I think it was so interesting because he talks about spending money as an art. And I think there's a lot of wisdom there, because if you spend it increasingly on material possessions, you might get a little dopamine high for a few days, then it's gone, and then you want the next possession. But if you spend it to buy back your time so you can do things that make you healthy and vibrant, or you take these wonderful vacations that you'll never forget, use money for experience and freeing up your schedule, I think that is the secret to spending money. So I love all this philosophical aspect of trying to figure out how you view money. And if you view it in a negative way, you're probably never going to be successful if you have this subconscious negativity towards money. So that's one thing I'm very passionate about, is just spreading the knowledge that knowledge goes a long way when it comes to finances, and just sacrifice a little bit today for your future self. And I'm passionate about this because I could have, when I retired from trading and I had a few $1,000,000 back in 2008, if I had been smarter with my money, I would be traveling the world, enjoying life right now. But I made all these mistakes and I pretty much went, my net worth went down to zero 5 years later. Talking about being grateful for bad things, I'm really happy about it because I want my son, and hopefully we're going to have more kids, future kids. I want them to see me working and striving and growing. I think it's really important for them to see that. And I think it would have been easy to be a bit lazy if you had a lot of zeros in the bank account. So I'm actually I'm at peace with all my mistakes because it's given me renewed gratitude and I've learned a lot of these wonderful lessons along the way. It's good. I look at my dad, who's very physically healthy, but he's mentally very stagnant after he retired. And he doesn't really to exercise. So he's 60, 76. So he's very healthy for his age. Mentally, he's really stagnated. We want to be around people and we want to be challenging ourselves. So it's a really nice feeling not to have that mindset like, oh, I have to do this job that I hate for the next 25 years so I can retire and do nothing. Like, I don't believe that at all.
100%. You said something a minute ago. First of all, really good book on money, if you're into it, is called Happy Pocket Full of Money. Happy Pocket Full of Money.
Ooh, I
It's
like
all
that.
about the energy of money. Because I, like you, but I believe money is not tangible. And this is one of the things I really dig into with my clients, my coaching clients, is because I tell them, money is not a tangible. It's not tangible. Like, unless you actually have a dollar, like, and it's still tangible. It's tangible, yeah, but your millions and millions of dollars, it's not tangible. No one walks around with millions of dollars in their pocket. It's literally on a screen and it tells you
Exactly.
this is what's there. And you don't even know if it's actually there, right? You're trusting. And so I tell them all the time, money is an energy. It will give you back what you give it. It's just like anything. And that's really what this book, Happy Pocket Full of Money, is all about. It just solidified it. You go about money in a negative way with scarcity, and you go about money with waste, and like Dan Martell's book, Buy Back Your Time, such a good book. And like you just said, The Art of Spending Money. If you go around, you're spending your money on a bunch of things that don't actually bring value to your life or actually help you fulfill your purpose, it's literally it's negative energy that you're putting toward money. That's one of the things that we work on a lot. So I just love that you brought that up because I'm like, it's the money mindset is super, super important.
And I'm really glad that you even told me, you said, well, why? I mentioned a throwaway comment when we talked last time. I mentioned about wanting to outsource more because you talked about, being overworked. That was great because I need that reminding too. And I kind of spread the message. Anyone that says they figured things out, whether it's life or business, they're a charlatan. I truly believe that people that I look up to, they're always questioning, always learning, always refining. You don't surf a wave and just you stand up on the board and stay there. You have to constantly recalibrate as you're surfing. And it's exactly the same with life. You're trying to figure out, am I working too much? Do I want to be better about outsourcing things? What do I like doing? Who do I like working with? What else is important to me? Every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. If I say yes to trying to write a book over the winter, it's going to be automatically less time with friends, less time maybe with my family. It's a sacrifice. It's a trade-off. And I think that's one of the reasons I hate politics is because people offer you something for nothing. And there's nothing, as Thomas Sowell said,
Yeah.
life is always about trade-offs.
Nothing costs nothing. It's funny. So let's talk about your niche into developers. For a lot of real estate agents, that's like the dream life. They want to, let's work with developers. Let me just go find a developer to work with, and then I can just sell a lot of properties and they're going to give me all the listings. Like there's kind of like this like selling sunset mentality around like getting into working with developers. How did you get into that niche? And tell me the dirty side of it, the side that people don't want to tell.
Just when we're about to talk, getting the recording going, I had just before I turned my phone off again, I had a call from one of my developers and I was laughing. He's a great guy. Shout out to my buddy Sean. When you're in a difficult market, developers with hard money loans or expensive loans, they're under a lot of pressure to get things sold. They also want to get the price they want, and the margins in Chicago are tight. It can be a little bit needy. So when you're working with a dozen of them and you're juggling everything, it has its own set of stresses. But I do agree with you that I'm very lucky in the sense that I would say probably half of the buildings I sell, I find my own buyers and I do dual agent. Sometimes that's easier than working with difficult and it is a constant stream of business because they're always building. So I'm definitely very lucky. Every niche you have does come with its own challenges, and I'm managing. Luckily, most of the guys I work with are just wonderful humans that have become good friends, and hopefully we're going to have that kind of altruistic relationship back the next 10 years. Very, very lucky to to be in the niche I'm in, but to get to where I'm at, I started originally when I first got in the business doing these developments with the guy that ended up costing me close to $1 million, 4 years of lawsuits and innumerable amount of stresses, sleepless nights and frustration. The guy went to my wedding, which was even more of a sore point, pretending to be a good friend while stabbing me in the back and lying to me for years. So that was tough. So in order to get my experience selling finished products to develop to investors, that was gut rehabs. He was a big gut rehab guy. And then through that, I was meeting buyers, thinking about when you look back at your life, like this one moment changed everything. My first big time new construction builder, George, met him. He had his broker's license as well, so he could sell his buildings. And I met him with one of my investors. We had a nice conversation because I barely remember. We spoke for a few minutes, but I was more talking to my client, walking the building. We went under contract. I bought 2 of his buildings. And then he pulled me aside and he said, "Hey, I want you to be the face of my company. I want you to sell all my buildings." And I remember saying to him, "I feel kind of bad taking your money because they're pretty big commission checks and you already have your license. Like, why do you want to use me? You'll be a better face for me. I want to focus on other things." So we've become great friends. He's referred me a bunch of other builders. And then through that experience, other builders. Once you start having a track record of setting comps in different areas, people find you, which is wonderful. But it all came down to that one conversation. Imagine I had not been polite or respectful to him and he thought I was kind of not the best guy, but he wouldn't have asked me that. And that potentially changed the trajectory of my career. It's just wild to think about. You never know. We don't live in a dozen parallel universes to see how your life would turn out. But it is crazy to think that's another example of one conversation. He obviously really liked me. And he said to me, he said, "I don't like many people. I don't trust many people, but there's something about you I like." I don't know what I said. I don't know what I did. It comes down to the fact. I always say this. When I was in business school, I should have had a class on being nice to people and being affable and how to get on with people. You know that old book, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie?
Great
My
book.
old trading boss would see me reading when I was in the trading pit. Sometimes there'll be no orders for 2 hours. But if you left the pit for 2 minutes and you missed the order, that could be the best order of the week. So you had to always, you try to, unless you had to run to the bathroom, you try to stay. So I would sit there and I would just read books when it was slow. The guys who read newspapers, talk nonsense, talk about American sports. At the time, I didn't know anything about American sports, and I would just read books. And so my old boss saw me reading and he said, "Oh, gave me a copy of it." And he said, "Well, I probably should have read this because I'm not very good at either making friends or influencing people, but I'd enjoy it." And I was laughing because he was a terrible boss who ended up, he was a great trader who got promoted to be a boss, and then he got demoted, sent back to New York just to be a trader again because he couldn't manage people. There's so many times in my life. That one example I just gave you, the developer, is just one. I'll give you another one. When I worked at my trading company, they were an English company. Then the English and the American branch decided to separate, and the American branch was going to become its own company. During that separation, they fired half the staff in America. One of the guys who was a pretty decent trader lost his job. And there was another guy who never made any money trading, but he was the jokester of the office. He was great energy. He was always fun. He ended up keeping his job. And I remember thinking, that's so wild. This guy who doesn't really make any money, but he's fun to be around, keeps his job. And my other buddy, who's actually a pretty decent trader, ends up losing his job. So there's so many instances where just being affable, being nice, being polite, being responsive, these tiny things do make a difference in successful people's career.
It's so true. Just like little tiny things. And you never know like what one question can do.
Mhm.
Like that one question you were asked and it totally changed the trajectory of your career. You never know the power of one single question and what that can actually do. A lot of times people are just kind of afraid to just ask the question.
I couldn't agree more. And I think it's a good reminder to try and be nice to people. I don't believe it's exactly reciprocal, but I think that when you put out good energy, you're nice, you're a good person, you're helpful, you're polite, you're responsive, it does come back in many ways. And a simple thing, like sometimes I get a listing that's just crazy good, and I know it's going to be a bidding war. And I have 4 brokers bugging me, trying to fight on the offers. I'm obviously going to do the best for my client in terms of price and terms. But I'm also probably going to lean towards helping the broker that I get on best with because there's the human element as well. And I want to have a smooth transaction and a professional transaction. All these things, like anyone in real estate, nice, but having a good reputation for being honest, all these things go a long way. I joke about saying there should be a class in business school because I just think that their basic manners are lacking. And maybe that's because I come from England and we're really big on, manners and things like that. I just see it time and time again where I'm just like, man, I don't know how these people get through having much success because of the way they act.
I agree with that. And that's actually why I started my coaching program because I totally agree with that. You work with people who on the other end who just want something, but there's not giving anything in return. So there's no value given, right? It's just give me, take,
Yeah.
take, but no value offered. And I, like you, I mean, always believed, and my mom taught me this. I mean, I grew up I'm a child of a very successful long-term lifetime, I would say, real estate agent. And one of the things she always taught me is like, the one way you can stand out is pick up the phone and do what you say you're going to do. So if you say you're going to follow up with somebody, follow up with them. Like her advice, and I mean, around real estate around the same decade, right? She's been in real estate for years before us. So she's saying this, and that, so it's been a long time thing in our industry. It's not just now, it's a long time thing. That's why I started my coaching program. So I was like, I got to change that. I'm going to change everything. Everything that you think about real estate agents, I am changing.
I love that. Can I ask, so does your mom still practice or is she retired now? So
Yep, she does. She's in like a retirement community now, so it's much slower, but she's never gonna stop.
That's amazing. I love hearing that. It must be so wild for her just seeing, I'm sure when she started like pre-internet time, it must have been just so different. And now the access to information and all the, even just that last change we had last year where you can't market the commissions and you have to get forms signed for buyers, like all that stuff. That for me, I'm thinking, oh, this is such a headache. I can only imagine for someone that's been in the business 30 years longer than me that has to deal with this. But I think that's really awesome. Like she's probably got some crazy stories about just the changes she's seen. Having said that, like you said, there's certain themes that still matter. Like do what
Right.
you say you're going to do, like you said, be responsive. Even with all the technological changes, the human element remains. And I think that's really cool.
100%. And that's going to be what takes us through. Like as we move into this AI driven world now, human element is the most important thing. So you can't lose that ability to just ask questions and just connect with people on a human. No amount of AI is going to take away the fact that I am a human being and I like other human beings. I like to talk to people. I like to like see and be like, hey, let me hear your story. Let's hear where you came from. And no amount of AI is ever going to take that away.
Couldn't agree more.
I love it. Okay, so tell me about the partnership collapse.
Looking back, there were definitely signs. The friend of mine, the attorney who started his real estate business, and then we started working together, he was one of my closest friends. And so as soon as I got my license, still had a bunch of money from my trading days, we were always talking about doing rehab. So he and I did the first one together. We put the money in and then we partnered with these two guys that I thought they were friends that did construction. I didn't know anything about them. We finished the first project and I found out that actually they didn't like each other. They both said the same thing about the other person. So I was like, well, one of these people is right. One of them is probably wrong. And I thought I was like, well, I have to choose now, which sucks because I like both of them. But I was like, well, the one I went with seemed more stable. He had also had an inspection company. He had 3 kids. He lived in the north suburbs of Chicago. It seemed like he just had his life. It was much more stable. And I was kind of stuck with him because I think we had bought another project to do and I'd put all the money in. I think it was in his name or something. So it kind of forced my hand. So then as we kept going, we finished and sold at least a dozen multi-units. And every time it was always squeezing me on commission. He always had these random excuses. Oh, like the next one will be different. I'm just like, I'm a nice guy. I'm rolling my eyes. I'm a long-term time horizon. I don't care about not getting much. We're going to do plenty of others. Then we got to the stage where just before the world shut down in 2020, I think we had 9 multi-units going on at the same time, between 2 and 6 units in good areas of the city that were expensive. I had all this money. My dad had some money, my uncle had some money, I had some friends and clients that were invested. I don't know quite exactly what happened because I found out later there was many years of lies. But he basically just said, I'm going to declare bankruptcy. I'm not going to finish these. It was such a crazy, those first few months when the world shut down, it was such a crazy time. Like no one really knew what was going on. It's almost like the fog of war. You never really know what's happening. I've kind of looking back now, just analyzing it as I'm thinking, as I'm talking, there was a lot of uncertainty and I don't know exactly what was and what was not. But basically he had all these hard money loans and the hard money lender said, listen, you've got to either pay back these loans or in the small print, we're going to take over all these properties. So I was like, well, don't do that. I wasn't signed on any of them. He was. So I co-signed on all the loans and I had more assets than him. So because of that, the bank were okay with. But then as we started selling the projects, every time I would have 100,000 invested in the building, would sell it and he'd say, oh, you can't get any money because I have to prepay the interest of the other projects, all these excuses. Finally, I was like, I don't think I'm ever going to get any money. So then I started talking to it. The other investors were like, Lawrence, you have to get attorneys involved. You have to sue him. We have to take over the buildings. And then I realized that a lot of the stuff I didn't have the right paperwork legally because again, I'm a bit of a trusting person. And the guy was at my wedding. I thought we were kind of friends. It ended up getting lawsuits get involved, and as soon as you get attorneys involved, you start people's true colors come out. So then he just said, okay, and he declared bankruptcy. There was a lot of behind the scenes shenanigans. Years later, I found out all this stuff. He did all this crazy stuff. But basically, I lost everything. And then my uncle and my dad, who I'm very close to my uncle, I told them, I'm not going to let you lose anything. So over time, the last few years, every time I get a big commission check, I'll send, 20, 30,000 to my uncle. I'm slowly paying him back. It was painful. Honestly, I was thinking about it last summer, and I was lying on the beach and I was reading a book on forgiveness. And I was thinking, okay, I haven't spoken to the guy in a few years. As soon as we started the legal stuff and I realized he'd been lying for years, I just blocked his number, blocked him from every social media, whatever. I have nothing, no contact. I don't want to carry any animosity in my heart. So I remember lying on the beach. My son's playing. He's 3 at the time. So beautiful summer day in the Midwest. And I'm reading this book and I was like, okay, let me put this to the test. I put it down and I said, okay, let me really think about this guy and just see if I can not just forgive him, but wish him the best, hope his family's well, all this stuff. And I was like, wow, I can. This is amazing. And the way I look at it is it doesn't affect him if I hate him or if I forgive him. He's irrelevant. What's relevant to me is how I look at things. And this is the same with anything in life. I look at it as a blessing because not only was it a hard lesson in life, and if my son ever goes through lawsuits when he's older, I can say, listen, I went through three of them. I had these other investors that then started suing me because they said, well, you're his partner because you co-signed on the loan. And I was telling them, I'm like, guys, I did this to help you out because he was threatening bankruptcy. I was trying to be a team player here, so I just made it way worse for myself. But I realized that, so not only did it give me some wisdom that I can pass on to my son, but also it forced me to dream much bigger. And I think if this hadn't happened, the bar of my goals and where I want to be in life would be so much lower. So I'm actually incredibly grateful it happened. I'm in a really good place. And it did take a bit of time. I'm not going to lie. There were times where I wanted to go to his house and do bad things that would probably put me in jail. I used to be a professional fighter, so I have that side of me. But
Okay.
I didn't do it. I was the better man, and I turned the other cheek, and I just moved on. And I think I was having a conversation with an ex-Navy SEAL, and he told me similar story. He'd been ripped off a few times. He was older. He was in his 60s, and he said, I've been ripped off a few times by people because I was too trusting. But I wouldn't trade that and the monetary loss, those things. I wouldn't trade it for being like this miserly, non-trusting person. He's like, I like the personality that I have. I like being this carefree, trusting person. So if it comes down to the fact that I got screwed over a few times when I'm young, I'm okay with it. And I remember when he said that to me, I thought, wow, that's so beautiful. There's a lot of people, you have a very small percentage of the population that are psychopaths. And then you have a lot of people, though, the spectrum of psychopathy. I think he was one of those guys where he had that side of him. And as soon as troubles came with 2020, it just came out. And in his mind, in his warped mind, he probably thinks he did the best for his family. And I was just a casualty. I don't take it personally. I think the lesson that I got, the big lesson I got is I want to write a book one day for my son. And I want to have lessons that I learned the hard way. And one of the chapters is going to be on partnerships. And the most important decision we make is if we're married to somebody, who do we want to tie our wagon to for the rest of our life? If your life is great and you're in a terrible relationship, your life sucks. And if your life is kind of sucky, but you're in a great relationship, your life's pretty decent. So that's one of the big decisions you can make, life partners, but also business partners. I made so much money trading with my old business partner. I couldn't have done anything without him. We were a great partnership for a while. So I think just choosing your partners wisely when it comes to not just romance, but also business, I think is a really important lesson. And the wonderful thing is the person that I mentioned who I first started selling his new construction buildings, we're now partners on multiple new developments together. I've seen his character and he literally does everything the opposite of the guy that screwed me over. He's just such a wonderful guy. And I'm like, man, I would never have met him if it wasn't for that. So
Right.
there's a lot of silver linings that you can take, that I can take. And I think it's the same for anybody. Last thing I'll say, because I know I'm rambling a little bit, but one thing I've noticed, I love reading great biographies and analyzing great people through history. And one thing I've noticed, especially with people that are alive today, and they're older, and they're talking about their success. Once you've reached this incredible mountaintop, you generally look back at the time when you're in the trenches and you're struggling, you don't know how you're going to pay your rent next month, but you're really trying to burn the boats and follow your dream. You look back at that time with fondness. And I've realized that where I've changed my whole mentality. When I was younger, I used to think, if I can tick the boxes, I'll be happy. And now I have the perspective that I have a lot of goals. There's books I haven't written, there's huge business goals. I want to expand my family. I still want to travel to all these different places, but I don't have to wait to do that to be happy. I'm going to be happy today, and I have the confidence that I'm going to do great things in my future and push myself and scare myself and challenge myself and not let it stop me. And that's been the biggest game changer for me in terms of happiness, is not waiting to accomplish things to be happy, just knowing you're doing your best with what you have every step of the way. Tomorrow's not promised. I've lost quite a few friends or people, acquaintances I've known very young, and I've realized that, man, we have to enjoy every day. Like even right now, I'm so blessed. We're recording this on a Friday afternoon. We're having a wonderful conversation. My phone is off the last hour. It's so nice just to have that connection. I prize this conversation. As soon as I'm done, I'm going to work out. I'm so happy I can work out again after my surgery. I'm going to spend time with my family. I'm going to enjoy those small things. I think pleasure in the small things and silver linings in the challenges. And even if someone's listening to this and their life is kind of a bit chaotic, they don't know how they're going to make it. You're going to make it. You're not there now, but just have the confidence that you'll make it. And the craziest thing is, one day you might look back at this time now when you're struggling with fondness, which is the weirdest thing, but it's something I've noticed again and again from successful people.
I love that you said that, because sometimes I feel like a crazy person when I say that, because I feel the exact same way. I'm like, like right now really sucks. Like it might be just this moment in your life where it really sucks, and it's okay to feel that way. It's okay to be down. It's okay to feel like it sucks. That's valid. You're validated in that. But the funny thing, or the crazy thing, or the interesting thing, whatever word you want to use, is that future you is going to look back and be so thankful. It's like there's gratitude behind losing, $1 million from a partner, right? There's gratitude behind that because you learned from that. And there's gratitude for me in the day that I came home and my husband was like, dude, you got to stop being married to your job. Like we're married, not your job, right? And even though that was a really, really, really hard moment, a really, really tough conversation, I'm so grateful for it because I wouldn't be here without that. And
That's
so I
so
think
true.
those hardships are just those are part of our defining moments that as people, to your point, that's what I learned from the successful people, right? So you can tell that you have a lot of success in your life. It's very apparent. You have a very you're very growth minded, you're very forward looking. It's very apparent because I talk to people all the time, real estate agents specifically all the time who need more of your energy in their life.
Well, thank you. And it's really true. It's like the analogy of you don't grow stronger muscles or lose weight without pain in the gym. And it's the same philosophy with when life is great, you don't really learn anything, but you learn from your losses. There's a wonderful saying from jiu-jitsu, from this old jiu-jitsu master who passed away. And he said, when you compete in jiu-jitsu, you either win or you learn. And he's basically reframing competition as either you win, so that's a success because it proves what you're doing is right and it can work in competition, or you learn, which is you lost, but you learned a valuable lesson and it'll make you better next time. And so true, that growth mindset. I really thank my parents for that. I think my dad I don't think he's ever said it explicitly, but it was just that thing where, listen, if you work hard at something, you'll get better at it. I try and teach it to my son too. It's such a wonderful way to go through life. And yeah, being optimistic, right? Because we have a choice and it's just about reframing. And I've been thinking since I've had my elbow surgery, it's been 9 days and I'm off the painkillers. It's pretty painful. And the doctor said, you have to crank it and move it and get all this scar tissue out, which is kind of miserable. And every morning I wake up and I think, man, I could be paralyzed, but instead I can jump out of bed and do things. Even just reframing the fact that we're healthy. You and I, we can see each other, we can hear each other, we have eyes, we have ears. Some people, they go through life deaf or they go through life blind, so there's so many ways you can reframe things and just be grateful for what you have. And I think that's what happiness is. Happiness is grateful for what you have. And there's so many successful people that are successful because they never rest on their laurels. They're never happy. They're always looking for more. So I think living a wonderful life is this complex interplay between those two things. Because if you just sit around and say, oh, I'm blessed, I'm alive, I'm happy, and you don't do anything, your life's probably not going to be great for too long. You have to still strive for things. But at the same time, you have to just enjoy the journey. It's such a cheesy thing, but you really do have to enjoy the journey because ultimately life is just made up of a lot of different days. And I try and just take every day as a special gift.
So true. Oh man, the conversation's good. I have a 10-minute stop. So we have 10 minutes. So I'm gonna get as much out of you as I can for the next 10 minutes. Tell me what's ahead for you in 2026 and beyond. Where are you taking your business or your life? Like what's ahead for Lawrence in general?
Well, thanks to you. I'm going to really think hard about outsourcing more and really working with people I like and being more efficient with my time. I would love to publish this book on interplay between these different asset classes to invest in. My wife's in the middle of IVF treatments, hopefully another kid on the way, so that'd be wonderful. But I think in terms of business and economically, we've had 2 years of these rising rates, rates highest they've been in 40 years. And I think as they start to cut rates now, hopefully it'll be a third one next month. Next year could be a real boom year. Just as when we came out of COVID and you had a year of people sitting at home, not being able to do things, suddenly when the world kind of reopened, I was crazy busy because everyone that wanted to buy something but they couldn't now could. And I think it's going to be the same thing we're going to see with all these people that are priced out of buying property because rates are too high. As they come down, it's going to be a fight for inventory. You're going to have more people listing because now they can buy something else. I think next year is going to be really busy. One thing that I never appreciated, when the market's good, the real estate market, you can be the best at your business, but if you're in 40-year interest rate highs, you're never going to have the best year of your career. You're just not. So you can do all the right things and you have to do all the right things year after year. And you have to maintain your relationships. But when times are good, I've got a new appreciation for maximizing the good times. So I think 2026, I do want to have the best year I've ever had in terms of sales because I think it's a cool aim. And I also want to have fun doing it and trying to work with people I like and outsource the people I don't like to be around too much. So I think that's very exciting for people. Say anyone in real estate who's listening to this and they're frustrated. I've had a lot of people that say, I want to leave the business. This sucks. They've had a really tough 18 to 24 months. I would say to them, hold fast, try and be optimistic. I think next year could be really good for business. That's the message I'll say. So I'm very optimistic for 2026.
What do you think about the 50-year mortgage? Have you looked into it at all?
Yeah, it's funny because if you have a 30-year mortgage, by year 16, you've only paid back a quarter of the principal and you've front loaded the interest. If you have a 15-year mortgage, by year 60, you have no mortgage. You own the property outright. So a 30-year mortgage, a lot of people, when that came in, they thought that was crazy and it's really good for the banks. But if you're disciplined, by extending the rate for 30 years to 50, the payment goes down a little bit. So it makes the affordability easier. But if you're disciplined, just pay on a 30-year loan, for example, if you pay 13 payments instead of 12 a year, so you pay one extra payment, I think the amortization goes from 30 to maybe 26, 25. If you do 14 payments a year, I think it goes down to 22 years. So you can shorten it dramatically. So for me, when I refinanced the house that I'm talking to you in, because I bought it a couple of years ago and rates were kind of on the way back, on the way up. When I refinance it, I'm not going to get a 15-year mortgage. I'm probably going to get a 30-year mortgage, but I'm just going to have the discipline to make those extra payments because I don't want to have, I'm 46. I don't want to have a mortgage when I'm 76. It's going to definitely cause people to buy things that they couldn't afford without it, and they're going to be front loading and paying interest, which is going to it's going to kind of suck for them. At the same time, that's the negative. On the positive side, they can get a home, and I think the value, I believe that trajectory of the dollar is going to be, it's been losing purchasing power a century, specifically the last 52 years since Nixon came off the gold standard. And I don't see that trend changing. I think politically, there's just so much pressure to do things that programs and things that they can't really afford. So they're going to keep adding to the money supply to do it. So that's why I'm very pro. And when I write my book, I think all those four assets we talked about, stocks, real estate, gold, and Bitcoin, I think they're all going to just keep going up. And so I think for people, so that's the positive is you get this 50-year mortgage, you're stuck paying all these front loading the interest and paying back very little principal in the beginning, but you're also getting a property that's likely going to keep going up because I always look at it when people talk about the price of real estate, I look at it from the sake of, listen, I build 3 units and I sell them. And I can tell you, I have a great partner who doesn't charge me a GC fee, which is normally 10 to 15%. And we make money, but it's a lot of work for not as much money as you'd think. And I see all these other developers struggling. I see rehabbers struggling. They can make money if they're good, but I've seen people lose money on rehab. So it's not that easy. So when you think about the price replacement cost of a building in terms of raw materials being almost what it's selling for, how can it go down? So I'm very optimistic on real estate.
I funny you just said, funny when you just said I don't want to have a mortgage when I'm 76. I'm like, oh my God, that's only 30 years from now.
Yeah,
And,
exactly.
and then like the 50-year mortgage, that's not, I'd be
96.
like, oh my God. It's funny when you just put it that way, even though I think about 30 or 50-year mortgage. I never like thought, dude, that's not that long from now, but
Yeah.
also it's a long time. I think that it's really funny.
It is funny, and it's weird. As you get older, it does seem, I think there's a reason for it because we have less time in the future. It does seem like life speeds up. And of course, you tend to get more responsibilities and busier as you get older too. So you're just like, man, the years fly by. They really do.
It's so funny. It's true. Okay, so how can my audience help you? You've been here, you've given me an hour of your time. How can my audience, when they see this, help you?
That's so sweet. I mean, they can go to Amazon and buy a copy of The Forgotten Asset Class and leave me a review, and I'll be eternally grateful. They can shoot me a message on LinkedIn, Lawrence Stunning, if you have any questions about real estate and investing. And I love talking to people. I'm very passionate about this. And sometimes I'll meet clients, investors. Sometimes I'll meet them for the first time. And then as I'm leaving, I think, man, I just talked their ear off. But it's because I'm really am passionate about this. Like I said, with the book I want to write, I'm also passionate about, there was a time when I left trading and at the time, I had about 400,000 in physical gold bullion because I was convinced that gold was going to go up to where it is now. And it ended up taking about 15 years to get there, and I sold it. But that would have been worth about 1.5 million if I kept it that long, So I'm passionate about gold. I'm passionate about Bitcoin. I'm passionate about stocks, and I'm passionate about real estate. I'm passionate about learning the niche for you to figure out what your future self is going to be grateful for making good financial decisions now. So learning about this stuff, you don't have to know everything, but you have to find something that works for your personality. And the one beautiful thing about real estate is it's tangible. You said a great comment earlier. You said money is it's just these ones and zeros, these binary codes and screens. It is kind of out there, And what is Bitcoin? Bitcoin is even more digital and esoteric. Whereas if you own a building, you can drive by, or if it's in another state, you can see videos and pictures, and you're like, man, I own this building. You're giving beautiful units. You're renting to people. You're giving them housing. There's something it's a wonderful feeling to own bricks and mortar. So every asset class has its pros and cons, but investing in real estate is very near and dear to my heart.
Love it. Awesome, Lawrence. Thank you so much for your time. I'm going to have you on again so we can dig into more of this later. Appreciate
it was such a treat. Happy Friday, and thank you for having me. I really appreciate you.